Oh boy. Where is the lighting? Okay. Ooh, she's red, mama. Oh, okay. So, hi guys. My warts are on fire. That sounds like a cry for help. So, this is where do I look the least red? So this is a fun thing to do when you put the camera on and then figure out what's wrong with your face. That's the opposite of what they do in Hollywood. Usually you do everything before, get a camera ready, and then go on Periscope. But this is why I like Periscope, because it. So I'm gonna hide chats. How do I do this? How do I fucking hide the chats? Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm sunburnt. It's a long story, but it factors in significantly to what I have to say. So I like Periscope because one, I don't really care about it that much. That's the key. Number two, I know that some people give me feedback that they like that I do it. That's all I need to know. Because three, I really just do it for myself. Knowing that there are people out there just provides a level of accountability for me, or an encouragement for me to organize my thoughts in a coherent way. It's almost like 90% cognitive organization and 10% cry for help or insurance, because if I do end up sounding legitimately insane, there'll be a record of it and somebody will let me know. Does that make sense? So I went a little too hard on the tanning, which this can happen on the beach. So listen, I'm not too, if I get too tanorexic, quote unquote, then we'll see it. But I have a nice tan. It's just my neck. My neck is really sensitive. So I put a towel over it. Usually when I go to the tanning bed, because it's just, sunblock, of course you can do. But anyways, what I wanted to talk about, this is my new place. It's a little untidy, so I'm not going to give a tour. Plus, there needs to be some boundary between private and public, which is, again, provides another wonderful segue. So I go out to West Hollywood tonight, and to Micky's. There's the famous drag show. Who was there? Raven. Morgan McMichael. So I wanted to see if she was working tonight. She sure as hell was. Hardest working woman in show business, by the way. And then fucking Mrs. Kasha Davis, fucking Darian Lake was there. I got to meet Glenn Allen and the other fucking fabulous one. I can't remember her name. She's so great. We chatted afterwards. We talked about the difference between painting for the back row in a theater versus painting for a selfie or an Instagram photo, whatever. Huge difference, by the way. And we're of the former ilk. That's a good word. Ilk. So, talking to people, I just met a couple of people. I'm outside smoking, well, obviously. So I'm talking to two people, one's to my right, one's to my left. And we're having a pretty lively conversation. It gets pretty hectic there. And I noticed that Pandora's there. So I talked with her. My other friend Diana, who's a local queen, fabulous. Talked to her. My friend Fina, who's my roommate, she's across I can't even get to her. She's other side of the bar. And somebody interrupts very politely my conversation to ask to shake my hand. And it was not clear that he knew who I was, although I kind of just assumed because that's reasonable. And then a couple sentences later asked for a selfie. And I said, oh God, no, I'm literally like a lobster. I don't want to take a photo right now out of drag. And that was difficult for this person to hear. And I understand why. So we go back and forth. Usually what happens, I've done this, and this is, tune out at this point, because a lot of times when a person talks about this kind of thing, usually this is trade talk, which means like, Nicole Kidman can only talk about the business of being Nicole Kidman to like fucking Sharon Stone, and like whether you're A-list or Z-list, if you're a public figure, you can, there's certain like colleague talk that is only, you save it for your colleagues or whatever, because otherwise you sound like a douche, because it doesn't really make any sense. Like, it's like, oh my, when celebrities cry out about their lack of privacy, or like, the common rebuttal is like, well, that's the price of being rich, that's the price of being famous, whatever. Drag Race girls in particular have long, or not long, but some of us lament the fact that we have none of the benefits of being famous and many of the drawbacks. That's not totally true. That's an exaggeration, but it is true to an extent because, very few of us are rich. I mean, it all depends on what your conception of rich is, because I'm certainly richer than I was 5 years ago when I was, 5 years ago I was making a living but had no savings. Now I'm able to have a little bit of savings. I won't bore you with the financial details. Anyways, so the point is, me refusing the selfie. And listen, I mean, I am in a luxury position where I don't by necessity need to cry out in anger or frustration ever in my life. And what I mean by that is that during the day, I don't have to yell, okay? Some people yell out of anger, they have no control of it. Others yell out of necessity. There's a few other reasons if you're getting, actually, I don't know. Maybe there isn't, but I'm not an angry person. I'd never have to go to the trouble of refusing anything. People don't try to attack me. I don't have to yell, no, don't kill me. I don't have to scream it. I don't have to scream, please help me in a parking garage. Luckily, most days I don't have to yell at all. I don't have to yell at an employee or an employer. Don't treat me like shit. I don't have to do that. So whenever I have to say the word no in my life, I find two things. Number one, usually, most often, in fact, pretty much all the time, that compassionately saying the word no involves some skill. Because B, people don't like to hear the word no, mama. They sure don't. Now, there's a lot of, so basically I want to tell you the story, and I want to make sure that it's really for me, because I want to recount it in a way that just want to double check that it makes sense. The interaction lasted about approximately 15 minutes. It took me 15 minutes to present my case in a way that was not, it's not that I was trying to tell this person what they wanted to hear, because certainly I wasn't. What this person wanted to hear was yes. And he turned out to be this really cool guy, a really cool Persian guy that, just between us girls, he ended up showing, I saw his dick, both in real life and on video. We'll get to that later. That's the hook. That hooks the viewer in. So let me try to get to that point. Let's connect the dots. He had been intoxicated, and as a person that doesn't drink, I'm usually fully aware of my faculties are they're available for use, usually in the most effective way. Now, of course, if I haven't slept because I've been on a plane or whatever, I'm going to be tired, and usually I'm going to be home, But I was out. I had all my wits about me. Wasn't tired at all. I was happy to see Morgan. I was thrilled to see everybody else. I didn't know. And Bianca I even saw, but I didn't go up to her because she looked like she smelled very bad. That was a joke. And so I'm ready to talk to people. I love talking to people. I'm actually excellent at talking to people. Communications is something you can major in. All communications all that communications means is talking to people, whether that's with your voice in your physical body or your head or your torso, like a newscaster, like an election debate host, or like a journalist, or or an author, whatever. It's, in print or orally, that's all that communications generally means. And I got a great education in that because I got to travel around the world and meet lots of different people. And that's not just from the gigs. Usually those folks are gay or gay friendly, but in the airports, in the cabs, in the Ubers, in the wherever. So I got not a crash course, but I got grad school in communications from Drag Race. That's why I not only think of RuPaul as my mother and my father, I think of her as my professor and the dean and the CEO and the CFO and a whole host of other titles that aren't immediately available to my brain at the moment, Barbara, because I'm a little bit tired. Anyways, so I've learned how to talk to people. So in this moment, when the guy asked me for a selfie and I said no, I explained just really quickly and casually, it's like, I have this Mondo sunburn. I'm sure you can see it. And then actually we had to diverge because what I'm saying is I'm not camera ready, right? And so that's a tough thing for people to wrap their heads around, because in regular life now, camera ready is not necessarily a phrase that people are familiar with, but it's certainly a feeling or a situation. When average Joes and Janes, who are not public figures, they are encouraged by each other, by social media, to document their lives. Some of this is aspirational. Some of this is just habit. Some of this is just because that's what Kim next door does, keeping up with the Kardashians, right? What does Kim Kardashian do all day? Well, she just, I mean, I don't know. She just takes selfies and then has her whatever. So I said, I'm not comfortable with the way I look right now to take a photo. And always what it is is like, oh, but you look amazing. And that's not true, because it's not that it's objectively true or untrue that I look amazing. It's that I don't feel that I am uncomfortable with the way I look for a photograph, which is a distinction that, now, I mean, I'm thinking about it because it's my life, right? But the problem here is that they're not listening to that, right? That doesn't matter, because they say, no, you look great, you look amazing. And it's, well, I know exactly how I look because I looked in the mirror when I left the house. If I have a piece of shit on my face, or if I have like a booger hanging out of my nose, or if I smile and it's all blood, usually people are going to be concerned, and in a pretty selfish fan would say, can you fix that blood? They wouldn't say, oh my God, you're hurt, we need to take you to the hospital. They'd say, can we fix that blood and then take the selfie, you know? And that's like Amy Schumer did a whole funny sketch about the phenomenon of like fan culture and needy fans. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense if you've never been in that position, but most people can kind of figure out. It's funny as hell. But so there's this is a big, and of course I realized the strangeness of me then using my social media platform to talk out about it at home alone. It's a whole complicated mess. The point is, what interested me about this conversation was that how can I say no and stick to it, and because it's the principle of the matter. And it proves along the way, it proved a couple of points. Number one is that miscommunication is obviously the key in any argument. That's not true. Miscommunication is often the key in arguments. And then, so if there's a misunderstanding, then that's usually when people fight, right? The really tricky part is when both parties know exactly what each other are talking about, but are unwilling to bend. That's when you have wars and shit, you know? But so I was trying to tell him, I was like, I don't feel comfortable taking, I said, I don't feel comfortable taking a selfie just because I want to hang out and I'm out of drag and I'm not working. Because when I'm working, all I do is take photographs, and that's a big part of my job. So by that time, after having said those sentences, I can see that it just was like there was no, it just wasn't sticking. Now you can, right off the bat, you can say that arguing or attempting to, it's not even arguing. Having a conversation with someone who is really drunk is often very pointless. And this is a strange thing about me as a person who doesn't drink, working in the nightlife, and then also dabbling in going out as a boy, which I'm certainly of course I can. But I do constantly come up against this unwillingness to hear the word no. And what interests me about it is that they never considered that as an option. That's what's interesting about it. So it's like when you ask a yes or no question, it's pretty, it would seem kind of reasonable to assume that if you've thought about the question, if it's not just a very spontaneous thing that's very stream of consciousness, just right out of nowhere, that you would have considered to hear either yes or no, right? It's like, let me just think of some questions. It's like, hey, do you have change for $1? No, I'm sorry, I don't. I don't have any cash. Hey, do you know how to get to Melrose from here? I think we're on Sunset. I don't know. I'm not from around here. Or I've lived here for 10 years and I don't know. And then the person wanders off and they're like, you've actually triggered some kind of awakening, because now they're like, they just realized they came to from amnesia or something, whatever. Or how about, hey, do you have an extra cigarette? And it's like, shit, I just smoked my last one. Or just, no. And the cigarette is a really, really good example, because for some reason, and I've smoked for 15 years. Cigarettes used to cost nothing. Now they cost something. But the smoking culture hasn't allowed for that rapid increase in price to really affect the etiquette of asking for cigarettes. So it is actually pretty reasonable to get a cigarette from somebody, especially if you're at a nightclub. It's kind of a shared, kind of like we're all in this together kind of vibe. For a smoker on the street, it's when you think, oh, I just paid $15 for this pack in New York, it's reasonable for a person to ask themselves, wait a minute, why is it okay for people to always ask for a cigarette? And why is it not okay when I just say, no, I'm sorry, but don't give an excuse why? Like, if I do have a full pack of cigarettes, but I don't want to give a cigarette, I can just say, no, I'm sorry, and just keep moving, and that's it. But when people get mad, and this is when I started to think about meet and greets. Not meet and greets, but going out of drag and refusing a selfie, because I refused a guy a cigarette in Montreal, and wasn't a homeless guy, wasn't in need. All the information was relevant to indicate that he was perfectly capable of finding a convenience store within the next 2 blocks and purchasing a pack of cigarettes on his own. And so I said, and he was white. That's important. Because white male entitlement is a thing, whether, we don't have time to get into that, but that factors in heavily. It also colors my perception of the situation and how I reacted. And that's not being colorblind, that's being color conscious. Because colorblindness is not a thing unless you're actually colorblind or blind. So anyways, I said no, and he did not accept that. In fact, his friend chastised me and said, you know what, man, like, whenever anybody asks you for a cigarette, you should just fucking give it to them. And I was like, whoa, god damn, I wish you were sober enough to like actually sit down for just 5 minutes and hash this out. But of course that's not possible, because if he's not sober, he's got somewhere to go, or he thinks he's important or whatever. And if he is drunk, then there's no reasoning with a drunk person. So you just let it go. But I walked away, did not give the cigarette out of principle, and I walked away. And I said to myself, I was like, that's fascinating. Also, as I was walking away, I was like, I do not disagree with your logic. Because I always try to make a joke out of it, because why? The truth is always funnier. Anyway, so I refused this selfie to this guy at Micky's. And it took me, it took 15 minutes for us to get to a point where we were on the same level. Because the business of compassionately refusing is tricky. I mean, it's tricky. A lot of people would just, anger sometimes is a good shutdown tactic, but then it turns into a pissing contest. And then you have to deal with the potential of violence. Now, listen, violence in a gay bar is when people are drunk, there's a lot of people around, so it could escalate to yelling, and then me being, I could see 3 steps into the future, which is anybody would come to my aid and tell him to buzz off. And he would have just buzzed off. But I was more curious in sticking to my guns, just out of an exercise. I don't go out that often. And to the principle. And because then he said something that was extraordinarily illuminating. And this is what he said. This is paraphrasing. And now keep in mind, the way we left it, not only would I have sex with him, I'd hang out with him. He's a cool guy. Cool guy. Just flat, and very attractive. Cool guy. I felt like that was Donald Trump-ish. Cool guy. So he said, when you go on a reality TV show, you should, and I'm paraphrasing and also making this sound a little bit more articulate than he said it, but he was drunk, so that's, and that you get a pass for not being able to articulately communicate when you are drunk. It's reasonable. Your actions, however, the drink don't excuse nothing, Brenda. So he said, when you go on a reality TV show, man, you should reasonably expect that when you go out in public, you are obligated to give a selfie. And it was that last bit, and I admit that reality TV stardom, in Drag Race stardom in particular, is very tricky because there is not a clear separation between our theatrical selves and our day-to-day selves. And I'm talking day-to-day selves is the relatable part. I mean, we're all human beings. Like, I'm not rich. I'm certainly way wealthier than I was 5 years ago, but that's not the point. There is a distinction, but the show, we become famous for both things, or there's the potential to be famous for both things on the show. So that makes it so complicated because a lot of times someone will come up to you when you're in drag. It's like, oh, I'm paid to be there. If I've traveled to, anywhere, I was just in Little Rock, Arkansas. I had the best time. We're up until 2:00 in the morning taking pictures. I'm paid and flown there and put up in a hotel to entertain on stage for a very reasonable amount of time. It's a small time, but it's to make an appearance. It's to make an appearance. People want to meet you and take a picture with you. That's it's a huge privilege, and it won't last forever, just like nothing will. But that's a huge privilege and something that I don't take it seriously. It's not that I take it seriously. It's just that I do it. I do it. It's my job. And I don't really think of it as a job in that it's very different from a bank teller job, which I've worked before. But it's the business of having fun. It's the business of being inspiring. It's the business of being fierce. It's the business of being friendly. It's the business of being a strange public figure. Strange as in unusual, not as in bad or good. A strange public figure, and there's an adjustment because it's a new thing. And I know I've talked about this before a million times with the meet and greets. And what I've learned from that last sort of chat to myself here on Periscope was that it all depends on context. And skillful action and skillful speech. The Buddhists call it right speech and right view. It all depends on context. What is the next right thing, or what is the next appropriate? Appropriate not as legal or illegal. Appropriate as in considering the information that we have here, considering the people involved, whether that's at the international conference table or in the sewing circle or in your living room or at Micky's Out of Drag. What for me is the most appropriate thing, and what for that person is the most appropriate thing. Now, the next indicated step for this person was, that's Katya, ask her for a selfie, go do it. And because of a list of circumstances that are maybe we don't really need to go into, there's not a lot of barriers between that, i.e. that person's not afraid of me, right? The way that a person might be afraid of Sharon Stone. I always come back to Sharon Stone because she's a classic Hollywood goddess before the time of, back when an autograph was an autograph and not a selfie. So selfies are now autographs. People still ask for autographs, and I love autographs because I love handwriting. I love handwriting. I went to Catholic school. I took penmanship tests. It's just like an archaic, lovely thing. I love taking the time to do it because it involves some time. Anyways, I also you feel like a movie star. It's fun. I mean, you feel like an old-fashioned movie star. Oh, Miss Monroe, may I have your autograph? And or like the Beatles and everything, and then they faint. It's just updated now. And anyways, but so back to the interaction that with the guy, and I do remember his name. I'll say he was Persian, and he was beautiful. And that really didn't actually factor in. I persisted in finding a common ground with him because I was selfish. I wanted, as an exercise, I was like, no, I need to. He kind of left in a huff, and I was like, okay, I'll let him leave. And he sure did come back. It took about 2 minutes for him to kind of ruminate, and I think he talked to his friends, and then he came back and he said, you know what, I thought it was something to the effect of, I thought you were nice, but you're really just a bitch. That's too simple. That's a kind of a crude paraphrasing of what he said. I think what he meant was that philosophically what he was like, he's like, there's some cognitive dissonance between what my expectations of you were and how you should behave versus what is actually happening. Again, people don't like to hear the word no. When you say to the doctor, can you please help me? But I don't have any money. And the doctor says, no, because that's not how it works. That's hard to hear. But if you have any awareness of how healthcare works in America, that no is not going to be a surprise. Now, there's not there's not generations or lots of information out there for this guy. You know, like, it's not like he could have Googled, how should I approach a drag queen out of drag in West Hollywood? I mean, it's just not like, my point is that there's not an established etiquette. There's not a custom. It's all contextual. But what was so fascinating to me was that it took 20 minutes, nearly 20 minutes of us communicating to each other to actually the interaction was perfect. He's like, literally said, now I understand where you're coming from. You're even better than I thought you were. And that was like, boom, that's it. Not because I have more fodder for my ego to say, oh, you're a great person, Margaret, go home and sleep well tonight. It wasn't that. It was just, I was like, okay, that was worth it for me and for you. That was better than the fucking selfie. And I don't even think that the irony is that I don't even think we ended up taking the selfie. But by that point, I was like, for this, we can take fucking 14 selfies, bitch. I don't care. But I was proud of myself that I, decided to stick with the interaction. And listen, I realized that this is bizarre. For the most reasonable people, they would have been like, Mary, just take the fucking photo. It would have taken 3 seconds. You know, that's true. But I'm not usual. I'm not usual. I'm a little bit unusual because to me, there's the two big takeaways were huge learning experiences for me. So A, it all depends on context, which means that indicates that there are no hard and fast rules for things that are always changing. You know, like there's no established tradition that I can refer to. You know, that's why trade show. That's why we talk about it with other marginally famous drag queens. You know, that's stuff we can talk about in our, when we kiki together in private. But I realized that there's, not only am I in every right to say no, I mean, I can refuse the selfie in drag. It all depends. There are consequences to everything. It doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong. In a climate now where literally the truth is so hard to find because the president-elect will just lie on Twitter. That's the, you know, I mean, yikes. The truth is hard to find. So it's not only like, it's not a true or not true thing. That was a tangent that I'm going to have a hard time getting back from. I think the point is that, you know, it's just really important to not be at the mercy of your expectations and not know why. Once you find out that there's a little bit of friction there. Like, that was the thing I was interested in. I was like, if there's any possibility that I can help this person see what I'm seeing, not because I'm right and they're wrong, because that's really irrelevant, to be honest. It's just that connection is really important. It's like you know, that stupid cliche about teachable moments. That's important though, because like many people have mentioned on Twitter and elsewhere, I get a lot of good juice from Twitter from people, because a lot of people who know what they're talking about tweet for free. Wonderful nuggets of wisdom. You just have to learn how to sift through the garbage. Pearls before swine, or needle in a haystack, whatever. The thing is that those interactions are more meaningful to me. And there's another, the thing is, I could argue from literally just a business perspective with the way things are with social media, that I can make a cogent, cohesive, compelling, and actually pretty funny argument of why I'll take the picture with you at a drag, and it's gonna cost you $15 fucking. I mean, I could literally make the argument in 3 steps. I'm like, if you seem to, people value my Instagram followers way more than I do. I just fell into it. I'm lucky. Now models can't get auditions with less than 20,000 Instagram followers. So that's cultural capital. Those numbers have incredible value. So from a business point of view, granted, this is not the way I think, and I actively fight this way of thinking because I feel like it leads to, for me, it invites negativity and obsessive, narcissistic thinking into my life. Being of a generation that existed before all of this stuff. I don't think it's all bad, but you got to be skillful. You got to know how to navigate it as a new person, whatever, millennial, whatever, it doesn't matter. But from a business point of view, I could say, I know you need to $20 for a photograph, and that's going to sound crazy out on the street or wherever. But from a financial point or from a business point of view, it's actually viable because a picture with me is valuable. People wait in line for it, and then I'm able to think 3 steps into the future. This is really why I'm doing this, and this is what I can't expect people to predict this. If I take a picture with one person, then it's just going to, and then another one, and then it turns into a meet and greet. And this is the part where people really start to drop off with the sympathy. It's like, oh, famous person, please complain more about why you're famous, or how you're famous. I don't expect any sympathy here, but I got to tell you, it was a really fascinating interaction, and I'm really glad that I stuck it out because I just learned how to say no in a way that was like, it was dignified. It was definitely compassionate, but it was like true. It was like a truth-seeking missile that most people wouldn't even have bothered, And unfortunately, it is a big barrier for me just meeting people. What I experience is the tiniest fraction of what my friend Fina said that Lady Gaga talked about, I think, where she says, was the thing I miss the most about, or the thing about fame that has changed, that she laments the most is that she can't just meet somebody on the street. And I talked about this with the other 2 friends I was with, because she can't, she could, but the likelihood of her getting recognized and then the fan, oh my God, you're Lady Gaga. It's reasonable to expect someone to literally scream and then fall down, and then you have to worry about this person who just fell down. So that kind of anonymity, of course, and it's that double-edged sword of this, well, then why did you go on TV? It's like, oh, because I wanted to be famous. And then you're like, oh, but then it's famous for what? Oh, do you have a skill to share? And then that becomes the focus. And then it's like, oh, I'll probably live to regret this. But, it was fascinating, man. And I think, and the takeaway is that it's not like I'm doing this video because I'm trying to be instructive about how I want to be approached. I just want to be approached in a way that makes sense. That's all. And that depends on the context. It's like, I ended up talking to this wonderful girl who has a connection to me back home, Quincy, Trish. I was talking with this one guy and this lovely girl, Sarah, and then another word, awesome, Korean. Yeah, because I was with another guy who thought I think he tried to speak Japanese to her. I don't know. Strange. Anyways, and she kind of came up to me and was waiting, and I could, obviously, because I have peripheral vision and it's not my first time at the rodeo, it's like, how interesting. I'm literally wrapping up processing my interaction with the Persian guy, with this other guy, and then, so we ended up, I engulfed her into the conversation and then held her hostage for about 15 minutes just processing this. And then we didn't end up taking a picture. And I was like, oh, interesting. It's like, there are no hard and fast rules. It's not like I want to don't ask me for a photo out of drag. All I encourage anybody to do is when you ask a yes or no question, be prepared for no. That's all. Because no is not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Hearing the word no, I'm sure there's a million fucking books all just about the power of no or the power of yes. I know there's movies about that. Yes, man. But when you hear the word no, sometimes it's great. It's like, doctor, is it stage 4 lymphoma like I predicted? And the doctor's like, no, No, you just have gas. You know, that's like, oh, thank God. You know, so, but it's so fascinating to me to witness I see it unfold in their faces. It's almost like you hear, especially when someone's drunk, because that all that does, well, not all that does, but sometimes what that does is simplify the cognitive process. It just kind of, it takes the, you know, you just see it for what it is. You know, when you're uninhibited, you just, the whole you can watch humanity unfold in a drunk person in a really dazzling and also quite depressing way sometimes. But yeah, it's just like you see them, it's almost like it's a foreign word. And it's like, it's so fascinating. But I just said, and I was thinking about how if I could cast 12 Hollywood actresses to say, in just scenes where all they have to do is refuse, or deny, or what's another word that's a little bit less negative? Politely decline. You know, with compassion. What would that sound like? And it's just like, oh, no thanks. It's like, hey, ma'am, would you like my mixtape? Oh, no thanks. Or just, no. You can say, and what's the shortest way and what's the most neutral way to say no? And you just say, no. I mean, that was pretty polite. And it's just, if you hear that word, it just sometimes, I think the point is people are fucking selfish sometimes, and that's their default, especially kids, but this guy wasn't a kid. And it's just hard to hear the word no when you don't want to hear the word no. And I think that's just the point. And I think this is a very small, little microcosmic kind of illustration of a very larger issue, which is like, hey, give me your land. And you're like, what? No, because A, it's not my land, and B, you're gonna murder me. You know, it's fascinating, and I think it's a good test of communication skills when you can identify the expectations that are leading to the kind of the friction of the situation, but still respond in a way that's respectful, dignified, although that's not really important, respectful and firm. Oh, I'm thinking, wait, I know I'm overthinking this, but I'm telling you, it was fucking awesome. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm lucky in that, like, I don't feel hostage. I don't feel like I know that Beyonce probably has at one point felt that she was a hostage of her fame because logistically she just really can't go much of anywhere. I'm assuming, and I don't know if that's true. This the tiniest fraction of fame, the tiniest fraction, but it's still significant because most people don't leave the house and have somebody come up to them and scream their name. And I'm not saying this is bad. I'm saying it's unusual because it is. When you go in, I've had people scream at me in the airport, and I'm not condemning it, condoning it, or anything. It's just the way it is, and it's fascinating to me. It's a new set of circumstances that I've had to adapt to, and in order to adapt to those circumstances, I've had to develop communication skills. Usually, humor is always the best way to diffuse any awkward or uncomfortable situation, if it's possible. Other times, you can't make a boulder trying to, that's going to crush you laugh, so you just jump out of the way. It all depends on context, but yeah, so I guess long story short is don't get a sunburn if you can avoid it, and protect your skin with sunscreen if you're going in the sun. And then, but if you ever ask a yes or no question and you don't have a lot of time to think about what all the possible scenarios would be, just be prepared for yes and no. It just makes sense. I'm going to Aspen soon. It's going to be fun on the slopes. It's going to be a lot of white people with a lot of white snow. It's a really rich town, but it's for Logo, and it'll be fun. It's Ginger, me, Alaska, and Shangela. Oh, and Willem, let me borrow some fur. Oh, also, I've got a Kickstarter update very soon, and a lot of exciting things happening. I don't know if the people on here, I don't know if there's overlap, but if you did donate on Kickstarter, I will thank you again. We'll follow up communication-wise on that platform. But in case you're one of those people, thank you, because you're the best. Okay, bye.